Hello, everyone. We'll start in 1 minute. Feel free to write on chat where you are joining us from around the world. Okay, and while you do that, I think that we will start. So good morning, good noon, and great afternoon, and even evening, depending on where you are joining us from around the world. Today, we have the second session in our series of Gen AI for software developers. Today, we have here myself, Adi Stein. I'm managing the digital and app innovation business in Southeast Europe. And together with me as a host, we have Moria Dror, the Reactor PM for EMEA. And our special guest, Liam Hampton, Senior Cloud Advocate at Microsoft. Just before we're going to start, a short briefing about the housekeeping. So we have a few logistical notes. First of all, today's session will last 1 hour and 15 minutes. And during the entire event, you can type your questions in the Q&A chat. Our moderators and speakers will do their best to answer most of them. If you don't want your name to be visible in the public chat, you have the option to type your questions anonymously. Today's event will be recorded. You will receive the recording along with the presentation deck and more resources of interest in the follow-up email, which you will receive in the next few days. At the end of the session, our moderators will post a survey link in the Q&A chat, and this one is for you because we want to hear you. Please spend a minute to write us the feedback, what went well, what is it that you would like us to improve, and some additional topics that you would like us to cover. Also, during today's session, we will run a contest, and you can win an online voucher offered by GitHub. How the contest will work. At the end of the session, we will post a question related to the topic presented during the webinar, and the first person who will answer correctly will be declared as the winner. For transparency, we will post the winner name on the public chat. So if you don't want your name to be visible to others, you can also answer anonymously, and our team will contact you through a private message to validate you and offer you the voucher and instruction on how to use it. In case the initial winner cannot be contacted or doesn't meet the criteria, we will contact the next person on our records. We wish you a good luck in this competition and may the best and the fastest win. And of course, it will not be great without this one. So for today's session, it's my really pleasure to introduce to you Liam Hampton, coming all the way to us from London, an amazing advocate. I can't get enough of hearing him on variety of topics. So thank you. Enjoy today's session. We will see you at the end of the session, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Adi. Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. My goodness, I can see so many of you. So yeah, welcome. My goodness, I've been looking forward to this session for so long. So thank you for having me on. And yeah, let's jump into it. So I'm just going to share my screen a second. So here we go. You should be able to see my screen now. I'm going to go into full screen mode on my presentation. Eddie, can you just give us a thumbs up if you can see the full screen of the presentation? I haven't done Teams Live before. Yeah, that's good. Awesome. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to go through how you can maintain and scale your AI applications on Azure. So who am I? My name is Liam Hampton. I'm a senior cloud advocate and software engineer here at Microsoft. So what engineering do I do, or what teams do I work with? Well, I work with developer tooling. Now, if you've ever used VS Code, Copilot, any of these really cool tools that we have at Microsoft, our team as an advocacy team are sort of working hand in hand with those to make it better, to take the feedback from you and take the new features to you. So with that in tune, let's go ahead and crack on with it. So I've got a short introduction around an agenda. What are we going to be talking about? Now, I appreciate that not everybody knows about AI, or if you do know about it, you've heard it, but you may not necessarily understand what it is or how it's really working. So in a bit to get us all up to the same level, we're going to talk a little bit about AI, some tokenization, and sort of how it all works, how you talk with large language models. Then we're going to look at how you actually interact with them through prompting and what that really means, because prompting is this new sort of word that's been around for a while in this space, and it's something which I didn't know about, or at least know too much about a year ago. Now, I've done a bit of digging, and there's different ways that you can prompt, and I'm excited to be able to show you how you do that. Then we're going to look at how you scale and maintain applications in general. So we're ignoring the AI part of it for 5 minutes, and we're just going to talk about how you actually look at scaling and maintaining your developer and your test and production environments. Then we're going to look at some security, because security is absolutely paramount. And as a developer, I speak to so many people, and it is still very obvious that people skip over security and at least don't have it as a first thought when they come to develop their applications and their workloads. And then finally, we're going to look at developer tooling. So how do we then sort of encapsulate all of that into one bucket, into one single tool, and how it will help you to deploy your applications through the Azure Developer CLI. That's the tool team that I work very closely with. So I'm going to ask a very simple question, and I get asked this quite a lot, not just at work, by my family, my friends, people outside, people around where I live, neighbors, and they all say, what is an AI application? What does that really mean? Now, an AI application is just like any other application, except it has artificial intelligence embedded into it to perform a certain action. So you look at it on a face value, it's a tool that performs a specific task that typically humans would do, i.e. you and me, but instead it uses AI. So it can be from a myriad of different things, but we're going to dig into that as we go. Once you kind of understand what an AI application is, you then got to dig a little bit deeper and think about how a large language model actually works. Now, I'm sure everybody who's watching this has used ChatGPT, or maybe Copilot, or a generative AI model, or at least a tool for that matter of fact. Well, people sometimes forget that you're not talking to a human, that this is still technology, it's still mathematics underneath it. And what a large language model does is it literally just predicts the next most likely token. Don't worry if you don't know what a token is, I am going to explain that. So here's a really quite a complicated diagram, but what we really have here is a natural language input. So you as a human would ask a question. That then goes into a processing algorithm, which will then break that down into tokens. Those tokens are essentially just numbers at this point. So don't worry too much about this. We are going to break down what those tokens mean, but they go into this sort of algorithm, turns it into numbers. Those numbers are then fed into a model, which you probably know of as GPT, GPT-4, 3.5, all these lovely, weird and wacky, wonderful names. And then it does a little bit of probability distribution. And this is where the mathematics comes in as to what it's going to give you next. Once it's finalized what it's sort of working on, it then decodes it and gives it to you as a single token as a natural language output. So when you're talking to ChatGPT, you ask it a question, it gives you an answer. But that answer is not a human, it's just made up of numbers. So that's the general gist of how a large language model is working in sort of a transformative way. So we'll break this down into a really simplistic view, and you're going to put n number of tokens in, and you're going to get one token out. So we've just shrunk that entire diagram down into what, 3, 6, 7 boxes here. So you can look at it in quite a simplistic view. So n tokens in, 1 token out. That's your question and your answer. So just to clarify what a token really is, a token is not a letter or a word. And this baffles me sometimes, and I'm sure it will probably baffle you. Now, this is a really good example. And if you go to platform.openai.com/tokenizer, you can actually put in your questions and your prompts and whatever it is you're writing, and it will tell you the number of tokens that it's going to use for the model. Because so many numbers are associated with these models, I sometimes get confused. This is a really good way to understand what you're asking, so you're not breaching any quotas or you're within quotas and limits. So you can see here that we need to stop. Those 4 words are actually a single token. So you can see these color coded. Each different color is a different token. Now, that's because they're short and they're really commonly used words. Therefore, they can be put into one single token. However, and this, I've been dreading this part of the presentation all day because this word trips me up all the time. Anthropomorphizing is not, I said it, is not a commonly used word, and it's actually really quite long. So you can see here that it's been split into 3 different tokens. So this is where the probability distribution comes in later down the line as to how it's going to predict what's coming next. Now, it's actually really quite confusing, but this was probably the easiest way that I could try to explain this one. So if we're going to put it into our simplistic view, we can then pop what we've just seen from the tokenizer into our our model here, or I shouldn't say model, it's more of our algorithm and our flow. We need to stop as a single token each, and then anthropomorphizing is in 3 separate tokens. So this is when we start to now look at, I think it's called the expanding window pattern. So what I mean by this is when you're putting these tokens in, and when you're putting your prompts together, you can see that how it's starting to build out that sentence, and it will naturally come to a stop at a certain stopping condition. So in my opinion, this is kind of an okay example, but I feel like it could have stopped in 2 places where it said we need to stop, full stop, but then it's continued to carry on. And as we're using our example, we can see this probability distribution happening at the end. So you can see these tokens that are now being added on to the end. So we need to stop. The next token is anthrop. The next token is omorph. The next token is ising. And you can see as we go down this expanding sentence is how these tokens are working. So just to put that into more of a, I guess, I don't even know words, like an illustration, that's the word, illustration. An illustrative way to put this is more with these values here. So we can see we need to stop, anthropomorph, and then the next one with the probability you can see. So I kind of lied to you. It's not really a single token that comes out at the end because it's always the next token that it's taking. Now, you can play with this in certain ways. So you can look at temperature. You've probably heard temperature before, or maybe p-top value. Now, these are certain things that you can play with. Now, we don't really have time to go into those today, which is why I haven't put them in this deck. But essentially, it opens or it widens or shrinks that window of probability of which it can take that next randomized token from, which is why if you ask the large language model, if you ask ChatGPT the same question a couple times, you're not always guaranteed to get the same answer out. And that is because it's done based on this probability of randomness to some extent. So if you have the temperature up, I think whether the temperature goes one way or the other, and it will give you a more creative response or a less creative response depending on where that temperature is. And the same with p-top value. So this is a really good way to illustrate how large language models are working, and it's actually really quite complicated. So I sometimes struggle to really wrap my head around this, but once you kind of get the basic gist of this and the foundations, it's kind of quite cool. So on the face of it, all they're doing is taking the next most likely token. That is the only thing a large language model does. So it's not a human, which is why you always need to validate everything that comes back. And you can measure that in different ways, but that's what it's doing. So now we can look at how we're interacting with these large language models. So now we're up to a base of tokens and what we're doing or what we're putting in versus getting out. Now we can look at how we interact them. And this is the fun bit for me. And I actually did quite a lot of learning around prompt engineering, and I did quite a bit of digging into this one because I was always curious as to how I was asking a single question and getting different answers, and how I was putting in more verbose questions and confusing the LLMs because I was putting too much context in certain ways. Now, prompt engineering is quite a finite art. I'm looking at it as more of like an artistry. Now, what do I mean by prompt engineering? Well, this was from the Microsoft docs, and prompt engineering is a technique that involves designing prompts for natural language processing models that this process improves accuracy and relevancy in responses. So you're essentially just designing something to get a better response at the end based on your question or your problem in hand. So prompt engineering is really down to you. And this is why it's quite a subjective place to be and work with, because everybody's going to talk differently. Now, I've certainly noticed the way that I'm explaining problems and issues that I'm facing at work and in my personal life so much more different now compared to when I was sort of AI before we sort of knew about prompt engineering and before we were working with these large language models. So it teaches you to be a lot more direct, and this can kind of help as a human, sort of as we are every day, but really helping me at work. And I really like sort of the psychology behind it and the understanding from a human's perspective as to how we're talking to one another, looking at these problems and tackling them, because it really helps teach you to be more precise. And I really like that. And it's all about context. So here's a couple of different prompts that you may have, or terms that you may have come across over the past, I don't know, maybe year or two now. God, my goodness, when was ChatGPT released? It was November of 2022, maybe. I think, my goodness, it's that long ago. But you may have heard these come out of the woodworks, right? So zero shot. Zero shot prompting is where you've given it no prior training. So imagine you just open up a box on ChatGPT and you say, build me a car, or do something, okay? Really basic. Now, it can come back and give you a car, but it doesn't know whether that car should have 10 wheels, 12 wheels, 4 wheels. It doesn't know whether it be red, green, blue, or white, you name it, okay? So there's very little context. So zero shot prompting is very, or no examples and nothing to go off prior to you asking. Then you've got one shot prompt, and these are actually pretty self-explanatory now as we go on. Once you understand zero shot, you'll understand the rest pretty quickly. But one shot is you give it a single example. So build me a car, or tell me how to build a car with 4 wheels. Okay, so now it knows it's got 4 wheels, so it can take the data set with all the cars it knows has 4 wheels, and it can kind of help you explain how to build something. Then you've got few shots, which is a small number of examples. This is really more common in coding. So if you're looking at building out a function, for example, and you give it a few shot prompt, this is where you tell it sort of the function name, what you'd expect it to come out, whether it should be a string or an integer that it should return the value at, and give you some kind of context. Then you've got multi-shot. Now, multi-shot is the most elaborative one to my knowledge, and this is where you are looking at so many different avenues of context. So you're giving it everything that needs to go off prior, during, and post your prompt. So give it some base examples of previous things you've written, then what your actual problem is, and then what you're expecting to come out at the end, and telling it how to format that. So that's a really good way, and that's probably how everybody should be prompting. It depends on your scenario, but that's how I like to prompt. I like to write verbose prompts, which are really direct and full of the most context possible to give me the best chance of getting a really good answer at the end. And then finally, we've got chain of thought, which is more of a conversational sort of avenue. And this is where you break the problem down into multiple steps. So you'd have more of a conversation, giving it more context as it builds up. Now, this is where people sort of run into it and run into problems with sort of confusion. Now, I love doing this. I like playing with large language models to see how far I can really push them. And when you have issues and when it sort of comes back with problems, or it gets confused or something you said, that's when you know you need to sort of reset and go again. But chain of thought is certainly starting to be more of a thing now. So let's just take that off a page and put it into an actual example. So here you have a user, and the user is just asking what the highest mountain in the world is. Now, this is a text-to-text language model. This is the most basic way to interact with them. So again, ChatGPT for an example. Then you wait for the assistant to come back and give you an answer. In this case, the highest mountain in the world is Mount Everest, blah, 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 blah. It's given like a whole bunch of information with some statistics, some sites, basically the data that it knows has available to it that's been trained on. Then came along text to image. Now, this was like a whole new revelation in AI when people were like, oh my God, we can create images now. Now, this was wonderful. And of course, you have the good actors who like to create lovely memes and some fun things and some lovely logos. But then obviously you've got the bad actors as well with deep fakes and that sort of stuff. So this is a really good way to sort of build out images. It helps marketing. It's a really fun way to interact with LLMs, and I really enjoyed this. Now, one of the ones that came out was probably Dolly, or Dolly 3, I think that's how you say it. At least that's how I've been calling it anyway. DALL-E3 is the one that I've been using. Now, here you can just describe the subject of what you want, give it some environment details. So here I'm saying a close-up of a cute raccoon walking through the forest, photorealistic texture and lighting. goes away, does its little bit of magic and processing, and it comes back with this really cool image of a raccoon walking through a forest, which is photorealistic. So it's able to take in the context and what you're asking for and output something to the user, which is brilliant. Then we've got text and image to text. So again, this is now like the next level up, like another layer of abstraction. And I think this came with GPT-4 Turbo with Vision, where you're able to sort of say, what's in this image? So we're giving it the raccoon picture. And it'll come back and say the image shows a cute raccoon in a forest setting. The raccoon is looking directly at the camera with a large expressive eyes, blah, 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 right? So this is, we've just built on more complexity each time. And this is what I love about AI, because it's been moving at such a fast pace. Whatever you know today is probably out of date by tomorrow. So there's always something new. And these models just keep getting better and better with more of the training data that we are using and the different sort of angles and problems that we're trying to solve with them. So you can see how we've kind of moved along in this instance. Now, there's also something called a system message. Now, a system message is more of like a meta prompt, similar to metadata, so it's just additional data. Now, here we can say, what is your name? So we're going back to text, but now we're giving it a bit more context behind the scenes. So I'm saying, what is your name? And it's just going to come back with a very basic answer saying, I don't have a name, but you can call me assistant. Well, what if I was to give it more of a system message saying, you are a friendly assistant called Liam, you always respond with a rhyme. So now it's got more of a context behind the scene. So if I ask what its name is, then it will come back to me and say, my name is Liam, nice to meet you, here to help with what you need to do. Admittedly, the rhyming wasn't very good, but it gets better. There's another good one. But you can see how this is now got meta prompting behind it. It's got a system message. It allows it to give it more context. So that I think that this rhyme's the better one. There's a, tell me a fun fact about a raccoon. So they're nimble, hands are truly a sight. They eat what they find both day and night. So that's much better, but you can have a good conversation and it's more sort of realistic and more of like an interaction as opposed to just static sort of conversation, which is really quite fun and good. Now, we of course do have a recommended system messaging framework. This is where you sort of define the model's profile, capabilities and limitations for your scenario. So again, specific tasks that you want it to do, different models of different use cases are going to require different sort of guidelines and restrictions and capabilities. So this is a really good way to have that in. Then you can define the model's output format. So again, you're giving it that context to work within. Providing examples to demonstrate the intended behavior of the model. This is really important actually, because this helps with the safeguarding in certain examples, but it also gives you sort of, it gives it the guide rails to go down the right path with the answering. Okay, so it's not just taking a random probability sort of pooling, it will just, it's able to give it a more of a context. And then you've got define the additional behavioral and safety guide rails. Again, certain chatbots or certain scenarios are going to require this to respond in different ways, some of which would not be appropriate for other use cases and vice versa. So this is a really good way to embed that into the model behind the scenes. So then we've got generative AI. We've been using it sort of like a ChatGPT-esque or Copilot scenarios. We're now moving towards agents. Now, agents is this super new field, I believe, with AI, and I always get a little bit confused as to what agents really are, but I've got a great example that I'm going to be showing you today. So an agent in LLM-based applications is an autonomous software entity. So it performs specific tasks on behalf of you. So this is not necessarily removing the human out of the loop completely, but it's giving it more of an autonomy to go ahead and do things. Now, I've got a perfect example, which I'm super excited to show you today, beyond all the other great stuff that I'm going to be talking about. But agents is the sort of the new way of interacting with AI models. So let's dig a little bit into agents. So when you look at them, they're more independent. So agents work on their own without needing constant human input. So like I said, I'm not removing the human from the loop, but it just doesn't need constant human input, whereas other ones or other methods do. It's more goal focused, so they perform specific tasks or jobs that they're really designed for. So you can sort of embed this right into your application to do something specifically, as opposed to being a generalistic model or a generalistic application. You can say, right, I want you to do the research. I want this agent to do the research. I want this agent to write the article. And I want this agent to evaluate that article and do some sort of like self-processing. and it's a bit more interactive. So agents can talk to other software and users to complete their tasks. So I gave a good talk at GopherCon around this, and this was all around function calling. So I asked my LLM, what's the weather like today? Now, of course, it would say it's dark and gloomy, but it doesn't really know real-time information. So what I was able to do is give it context of a function, which I had in my code, where it would just go off and call the getWeather API. And then that got real-time information. So it knew that whenever I asked a prompt around weather, it would go off and call the API, it consumed the live data input, and then be able to feed that back to a user in natural language. So it's a lot more interactive, and you can give it a lot more context. And function calling is one of the most powerful parts, I believe, of agents, and it's super fun to work with. So at Microsoft, we have got tons of services, and they're just growing. But to make all of this possible and more, in Azure, we've actually got all of these services that are available, from translation to speech to document intelligence and so much more. And we're going to use a few of these today. We're actually going to be using the cognitive service, which will come under, I believe, it'll be an Azure OpenAI service. So that's enough of AI. Hopefully I've got you all up to speed. That's 20 minutes. That was a bit longer than I intended. I'm sorry, but I feel it's really important to get us all up to the same level for AI. Now,
Yeah, before we move on, we have some questions, whether you would like to answer them.
Yep.
Two questions that I want to raise. So the first one is, can LLM help with auto text classification in Excel?
Oh, that would be, I think, more of a Copilot answer. So I know we have Copilot in 365. Now in Excel, I'm not an absolute expert in Excel, but yes, so I know that certain people and certain teams are using this for data. So if you want to build like a pivot table or something, or you have lots of data in there, Copilot can certainly help sort of skim that down and build it out.
So the answer is definitely yes. And if there is a specific question, so the Excel team is also, R&D team is located where I live. So feel free to write the question on chat, and I will take that with them. And the second question is, when the OpenAI O1 will be on Azure OpenAI?
I do not know, is my honest answer. Full transparency there.
So for that one, I actually asked the Copilot work, and we got the answer that I got is the OpenAI new reasoning model series, including the O1 preview and O1 mini models, are now accessible in the Azure AI Studio and GitHub models for a selected group of Azure customers. So I guess that it will be out really soon, and I will share the extended answer on chat.
Amazing
and that's it for now. Let's continue.
Wonderful. Thank you. No, that's a great questions. Great questions. Unfortunately, I don't have full visibility of what's going on with all the models. There's so many new ones that come out all the time, and they are constantly being updated. So thank you, Eddie, for
actually there are a few more, but I will put them on chat, and then we will review them soon.
Amazing. Cool stuff. All right, so now we're up to like a base level of AI and sort of how it's working, how we're interacting with LLMs, and sort of what we're doing. How do you scale your applications to match your demand? So this is something which is always spoken about with DevOps. Now, my background is in DevOps, is in containerization, is in scaling and sort of microservice architectures. Now, this is something I absolutely love. So when you talk about scaling, there's two different ways. You've got horizontal, which is across the board, and this is where you add multiple machines of the same power to meet your demand. So add more of the same compute, basically. And then you've got vertical scaling, and this is where you add more powerful compute. So you can see here, I've gone from 2 CPU to 2 CPU to 2 CPU, so processors, to 2 to 4 to 16, right? So you're adding more powerful compute each time to match your demands. Both have got their advantages, both have got their cons, but they both need to be elastic to bend to your demands. Now, there's a number of sort of factors that go into this when you're talking and thinking about scaling and sort of how you can scale your applications. Now, the thoughts around scaling AI applications specifically is very similar to how you think about scaling applications generally. So the first thing you look at is cost. So it's going to be costly to always add more compute power. Nothing in the world is free. We all know this one. So if something's free, you're the product, you know that. So think about the cost. The cost associated with having multiple of the same compute may be a bit cheaper than having more powerful compute, and vice versa. It depends what you're doing, and it depends how you're really working and how intensive your application is at the bottom line of it. Now, if you're looking at AI hardware, we all know that it's expensive to run AI. We know this one. If you look at, I know, NVIDIA, for example, you've seen what's happened to them. They are just like the powerhouse of chips right now. It's really good and really interesting to see this happen. I don't know, go back 10, 15 years and you wanted to buy a GPU, it would be a heck of a lot cheaper then than it is to buy one now. So it's all about that processing power that you have. So thinking about cost and your return on investment is a really big factor of scaling. Then we've got skills. Now, when I wrote this slide, this was only about a month ago when I put this slide together. And I just did a really quick search on LinkedIn of how many AI engineers are in London or how many roles are open. And there was almost 1,000. There was almost 1,000, which tells me that there is somewhat of a skills gap in this area. And when it comes to sort of scaling these applications, who's going to fill that gap? Who's going to do that for you? So consider it. Consider the skills that are needed. Because, hey, at the end of the day, we're all engineers and we're all here to sort of try and learn. And if you're not trying to learn something new, then what are you really doing as an engineer at the end of the day? So these job roles can actually be easily filled. But again, it just looks as to whether you need the skills now or whether you're intended to invest in those later. Then you've got to look at whether you actually need AI. Do you need it, or is it just for the clout of having it and saying, I've got AI? That's a really important factor to sort of bake into this one. Now, I speak to so many developers who just said, oh, this AI boom is great. I can now automate my recipe. Okay, wonderful. Did you really need that, or could you have just read the book or sort of used some creativity to figure that out? So it's a really cool thing to have there, but as a company and as a business, is it really needed to invest in AI? And you'll see this a lot. Now, we sort of went through the boom and the peak, and now I think what we're trying to see, or what we're seeing now in the market, is more people realizing they don't necessarily need AI as much as they thought they did, which is really interesting. And that's just coming out of general conversation. And then, of course, you've got the availability of models. So different models, I think this is about a month old, so there may or may not be more on there now. Looking at the availability of models. So if you do need AI, wonderful. Is it available in your region? Is it affordable? Can you afford it? Different regions have different costs, different bandwidths, different throughput, etc., as you know. So there's always going to be latency involved with something which is the other side of the world, unless you're using like a CDN, for example. So these are some thoughts which I thought I'd put down on paper just to sort of see or talk about when scaling applications, and not necessarily specifically AI application, but applications in general that use AI models. So how are you maintaining these apps? Now, again, stripping AI out of the equation, how do you look after your production environment? Now, some of you may or may not have seen this. This is the unofficial DevOps lifecycle, and you've got 8 different stages. You've got the plan, code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, and monitor. This is my wheelhouse, and I love this because this is a culturally driven movement that's happened over the past 15 years. Now, we've really moved away from waterfall, gone to more of a DevOps. It's sort of like the pendulum swung really far from waterfall to DevOps, and now it's sort of swinging between the two, which I quite like. That we found like a happy medium when it comes to looking after production environments, but these different stages are broken down into different technologies. So DevOps isn't a technology. It's just a wheelhouse of technologies. So just to give an example, you may write your code in Go. I'm a Go engineer. I love writing Go. But you may want to test or have a front end written in JavaScript or maybe React, and you want to use Cypress to test it, or you want to deploy that using Jenkins. So these different stages have got different technologies. What comes with different technologies? Different skills. So if you're looking at this, you're kind of looking to employ multiple skilled developers that wear different hats. So on the left hand side, you've got more development. On the right hand side, you've definitely got operations. So where do you find a developer that's kind of comfortable in the middle? So this is how you can sort of upskill your team to be able to maintain and look after those applications with multiple skills. So we've kind of broken this down into quite a granular level now, but maintaining your production environment is really important. and it's really difficult to do. So just sort of churn on that for a minute while we talk about the next part. So if you want to add AI into the mix and you're building and training models, so this is not maintaining applications that utilize AI now, this is applications that, or models that are AI, then you have the ML DevOps lifecycle. And this is where you're going to be looking at sort of data integrity, scripts, much more sort of data-driven decisions at that point when it comes to sort of building your models, when it comes to training them and throwing them out the other end. As the saying goes, rubbish in, rubbish out. As we saw that on our diagram earlier, what you come in determines what comes out. So adding AI into the mix within teams is actually really quite hard to do, as that adds like another layer of abstraction, another layer of difficulty, and it's just something that you need to be cautious of when you're doing this. So again, this is a little bit off tangent, but this is more so to get you thinking about what happens when you're building and deploying these models yourself. So if you're doing a self-trained model, how are you thinking about that within your team? Where's the data coming from? Is it a reasonably resourced data set that you have? Is it reliable? Is it biased? So all of these different questions that start popping up when you look at DevOps and maintaining that application. And then we can look at how you can be secure. So I've already spoken about this, like security is not a thing which a lot of developers think about. It's not something which developers come to me and scream and shout about, but it's something that we should all really be focusing on. Now, when it comes to security, how you can be secure in your applications, and again, this goes for AI applications as well as regular ones, users should only have the least amount of access possible to do their job. Now, this is the principles of least privilege or zero trust, however you want to look at this one. This is really important. And this goes as far as sort of the administrator giving a developer access to do certain things within an account. So it may be able to create a deployment, but they may require sort of approval to delete that deployment afterwards, so on and so forth, or maybe the other way around. So principles of least privilege is a really important way to look at this. So different policies and different role-based access control for different users is really important. So again, zero trust. Shifting left is another important security fundamental. So embedding it into the code itself. We are always so concerned about writing our code and then thinking, oh, is there a vulnerability in it? Did I import a package that I shouldn't have done? Oh, wait, is that package compromised? So if you're doing these checks and thinking about this when you're writing the code or before you even embed that package into your application code, this is what we mean by shifting left. So thinking about those practices, being proactive rather than reactive. Now that, again, is really important when it comes to maintaining the integrity and security of these applications. So, general things, don't expose keys, identifiable information in logs, just those sort of generalistic things. That's what we mean when we say shift left. And then you've got the investment in tools. So try Cloud Broker. See what really happens when you inject tracing and visibility into your application workflow so you can see the movement of your data. Is it secure? Do you have anything which is capturing that data? Is anything being leaked? So you can kind of see these sort of things if you put these into your processes. So invest in the right tools and it will save you in the long run. And then what we use, just added this one in, is managed identities. So passwordless authentication, essentially. So you can use managed identities to authenticate with any resource that supports Microsoft Entra authentication. So this is no extra cost in Azure, to my knowledge. This is just basically removing the whole need to do environment variables, secret keys, that kind of stuff. So you don't have credentials, you don't have certificates, you don't have your keys lying around. This is what we're using. And I use that in the application today. So I don't actually have any keys. I'm using managed identities to authenticate with my services in Azure. So that's like a quick whistle stop talk, because I know we're running out of time a little bit, and I want to get to the demo to show you what's been going on. Now, how do you sort of put that into one lovely bucket of goodness? Well, you need the developer tooling to make this possible. So how do you encapsulate all of that into one tool? Well, we have a tool at Microsoft which we call the Azure Developer CLI. Now, it's all around platform engineering. So what is platform engineering? Well, the purpose of platform engineering is to improve your experience as a developer, to really help you automate the infrastructure operations, to make that life a little bit easier when it comes to deploying things. And ultimately, the goal is to create just this frictionless environment and self-service for you, basically. So that's the intention of platform engineering. Let's strip it down to basics. You've got a front end and a back end and a server. No AI, no nothing, just a real basic 3-tier application. This is super simple, so don't take this at face value. If you want to get that into the cloud, some people may know how to do it. Others may have difficulty if you're not a full stack engineer. So like myself, I sometimes really struggle with, in fact, I always struggle with front end applications. I'm a back end developer and I can talk to databases and do all the lovely logic in the back end. I don't do front end and I find it really difficult to connect the two. So then imagine trying to get that into the cloud. Already for a 3-tier application, I'm struggling. This is really hard and quite painful and quite time audacious. You know, it's really hard for me to sit down and think I'm going to spend the next 6 hours doing this, knowing that I have to block out that 6 hours of time in my day. It's just not possible. So that's at the point where a lot of developers think, I know, I can't do it. You know, you may give up. So imagine what happens when you're faced with an application that looks like this. It's crazy, crazy complicated. So here we've got, I don't know, user inputs, application insights, managed identities, container apps that talk to all these different services for the processing with the different agents. This is an AI application. So we've now added, we've struggled with a 3-tier application, like a real basic website, hello world. What happens if you inject AI into that? You know, it becomes a lot more complicated, a lot more complex. So you just end up crying a little bit more and you give up sooner, or at least I do anyway. This is where the Azure Developer CLI comes in. Now, AZD is a phenomenal tool. Now, we noticed a lot of the pain points for developers. We noticed that developers are really quite struggling to get their code to cloud. It's not always the most easy process. Error messages aren't always the most expressive and tell you how to fix things. We noticed that, and so did the team. So AZD is all around platform engineering, getting your code to cloud really quite simply with one command. How do you install it? Well, it's available on 3 different platforms, Windows, Linux, and Mac. Now, I'm not expecting you to be able to memorize this, so take a screenshot, take a picture, whatever you want to do. There will also be resources sent out after this session as well. So go ahead and have a little look at those. What does it support? Well, AZD supports a whole bunch of languages, JavaScript, .NET, Python, and Java. So these are the main common languages that we use here at Microsoft. These are the ones that are obviously supported first. And this is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant because this covers a whole ton of developers that try and get their applications into Azure. Now, developers are pretty used to sort of imperative CLIs with flags and arguments. So you may have used the Azure CLI, for example. You can't do everything in one command. You have to create certain resources, add to it, give it names, locations, blah, 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 so on and so forth. That's a long-winded way to do it, is probably the way I should say that. AZD is more high-level commands. So you have up, provision, monitor, pipeline config, down. So really quite simplistic, easy to remember, easy to use commands. Disclaimer, these are not all of the commands that you can use with AZD. There are a bunch more, which I can show you. My code space hasn't timed out, but it uses infrastructure as code. So although you're using AZD up, it'll be using bicep as the underlying infrastructure as code files to then deploy and call those service APIs to send your application code to the cloud, which is brilliant. Really easy way to get your code up. So what is it? It's an ecosystem. It's not just a CLI, right? So you can have an extension. So the extension is in VS Code. You can install it through the marketplace. I don't think it's in preview anymore. This is quite an old screenshot, but you can go ahead and grab that one. It's in Visual Studio Code. You also need the, what do I press there? Yeah, the bicep. The extension, the bicep extension. So it uses bicep as the underlying sort of feature for this one. So you need the bicep infrastructure as code files. Again, need the extension, but it's actually all installed. If you install the AZD CLI, it actually installs it for you as well. And obviously, if you remove AZD, it removes it as well. So whatever was installed with it gets taken off, which is great. So how do you get started? Because some of you are probably there saying, Liam, I don't know bicep. I don't know infrastructure as code. Don't worry, we've got you, because AZD runs on templates. Now, these templates are phenomenal, and these are both Microsoft authored and community authored. So one thing I haven't mentioned already is the fact that it is an open source tooling. And we run our community calls every month. We had one yesterday. The next one is on October the 23rd, and it's on the Azure Developer YouTube channel. So this is a really good way to get started. You literally don't need to do much at all besides grab the template, follow the README instructions, which is like a couple of commands, and then there you are, you're up and running. As long as you've got an Azure account, easy going. So it's run on templates. You can build your own templates, distribute them, give back to the community, or you can grab others, use them, modify them, and then you're up and running even quicker. So this is a really good way to get started if you are building a new startup and maybe you're not so technical and you don't know how to piece all the different bits together, but you've got that phenomenal idea in your head of what you want to build. Find a template, massage a little bit, and then off you go. It's much quicker, much easier. Team onboarding. So if you're joining a new team or if you have a new starter joining your team, if you're a leader, then this is a really good way to get hands-on with AZD and get them up to speed with the environment so they can play around. Maybe if you want to use it in a code space, ephemeral storage, blat it afterwards, all good. Environment separation. So say you want a dev environment, you want a test environment, and you want a production environment. Your production is your holy grail. You don't touch that. It never changes unless something goes through and passes all the tests. Well, you can have your test and pre-prod environment completely separate and spun up seamlessly with AZD. So again, you determine how to do that. And then of course, if you're a student or at university, so if you're a lecturer, then you will, that's a really good way to get your students up and running. Now, brilliant way is, I remember when I was at university, I spent lectures or like hours just trying to set up my environments. It didn't work very well. I spent like half the time setting it up as opposed to actually doing it. So really good way to get hands-on with that as well. So I can also, where's my mouse? My mouse is down here. One second, let me just move this from the screen. Lovely stuff. So now we actually have a demo. Now we're finally at the demo part. Finally, we got there. But let me just jump out of here a second and let me see if CodeSpace, it did work. Wonderful. So I'm using a creative writer. So this Contoso is Microsoft's way of having like a fake store. It's brilliant. It's what we use in all our demos if you've seen it before. So I'm going to show the video of us setting up this application because it takes a long time. Believe me, I've done this enough times this week. It takes about 20 minutes. So I'm going to speed this up and show you a quick video and just talk over it. But we're then going to hop into the real thing and I'm going to take you through the code, what it's done, and what we're ending with. So hopefully, if I do this, it should play. Here we go. Lovely stuff. So I'm going to open this in a code space. So I go to the repository, click on the green button and click create code space on main. Now I'm using the main branch. It's a template, which is brilliant. It's set itself up. I'm then going to do the 3 commands that it asked me to run to begin with. So I'm just going to scroll down here and head on over to the login details. So like I said, that really complicated application, which I spoke about in the slides, we're actually going to be deploying it today. So I'm going to do the AZD auth login. So I need to log into both the AZD CLI and the AZ CLI, so the Azure CLI. Now I skip this just for your sake and ease. And then I log into the Azure CLI. This is where the magic will happen straight after this command. So we've logged in. We're now going to use the AZD demo mode because security is top of mind here, and I do not want you seeing all of our subscriptions that we have internally. So removing that from the terminal, we are then going to do AZD up. Now AZD up is the magic command here because this is what is going to prompt me to put in the new environment name for this application. As you can see, top left, the .azure file just got created. And then we're going to select a region. So I'm going to select Canada East because I know all of the resources from this application are based in Canada East, and I know that there's quota available for me. Now, this is one of the best bits. We're just going to watch this just zoom by. When I say this took a bit of time, this took about 20 minutes. So I didn't want to do this live on stream, but what I did do in the background is I kicked one off alongside this presentation. So hopefully the code space is still alive and it's still in there. We'll be able to get the one and take you to it live. So this took about 20 minutes, 25 minutes all in, but you can see that we have got a ton of resources. Imagine if you're a developer and you had to do this all by yourself. If you had to create each and every one of these, now this is a really complicated example because I want to show you how complex you can do this. and how simple and easy it is. This is a post-provision script that we're now running, and this is just going through with all the hooks. So I'm just installing packages for my agents, and like I said, we're going to get to that bit in a minute. But you can see here the post-provision script has finished. We've updated everything, and I am going to skip that bit because we're going to go and see it live now. So now's probably a really good time to just take 1 or 2 questions if you want.
Yes, we actually have a few.
Wonderful.
Let's see. When would you use AZD and when would you use ADO pipeline?
Okay, so AZD is for developers who want to go from nothing to something, or be and have like an entire ecosystem for that application. So when you say ADO pipeline, I'm not really well versed in ADO pipelines, but AZD will help you set up your code, your infrastructure, as you can see on the screen in a second. It will deploy it all for you. It will keep it all under one wheelhouse, and you can go and create a CI/CD pipeline to automate everything using service principles. So you have absolutely everything you need to create different environments, have everything deployed for you, and your CI/CD automation. So you just need to create a change, AZD provision, AZD up, or deploy, rather AZD deploy is the command, and then it would just go off and change the one thing that you changed. So it's a really simplistic way to have it sort of looking over your code base and your application deployment in one space.
Next one, can we use Terraform templates?
Oh, sorry, you broke up a little bit there, Eddie.
I was asking whether we can use Terraform templates.
Yes, so AZD does support Terraform, but it also supports Bicep. Bicep is the main driver because Bicep is a domain-specific language and it's based around the Microsoft technologies. So Bicep, I believe, will always get the service APIs first. Terraform, obviously being open source and a third party, still supports it, but may not necessarily be able to get all of the service APIs for the resources.
Gabriel is saying that this looks great. It would be cool if you could add the YouTube tutorial links.
Absolutely. So yes, like I said, I didn't want to do this all live, not only because I'm scared to do it, I'm absolutely not, it's because it just took too long. But yes, I will certainly have a YouTube tutorial link, and we do have some examples already there for you. But with that in mind, I'm just going to pause for a second because I actually want to show you what it's done and what it's deployed. Now, just ignore this stack error at the bottom. This is just a problem which we have with this template, but it did deploy successfully. As you can see, I did this live. Now, the reason I did this live behind the scenes is because the terminal output for this specific application is just so verbose, you actually miss all of the AZD stuff at the top. So you can see all of this jargon. I should probably have turned this off, but if we go down, we can actually see that it did deploy my application absolutely fine. So before we go and jump into what the application is doing, because I know you're eager to see it, we can see that when we ran AZD up, that .azure, maybe if I can do a, there we go, this .azure folder over here is sort of like the environment folder that we need. And this hosts my deployment. So we've got the M file for keys and things which I would need specifically to talk to one another, not the managed identity though. So then you got the config and whatever goes along with this. So you can see that my default environment name. So basically what I'm going to create is based on my environment. Now that's just more of like the logistics behind AZD. The main part of it is actually in the infra folder. So infra is where you write all of your Bicep. So we can just dig into one of these here and we can kind of see what it's starting to create. So this is quite big, but we've got user roles, for example. So this is using managed identities, as I said. So this is keyless authentication. We've also got, what have we got? The Bing. We've got the Bing resource, which we saw on that diagram. In fact, I can just show you again. Let's go to this one here. So here we go. So what we basically spun up is this big complicated application of using agents. Now this is research agents and writing agents and an editor agent. So this is like a self-processing blog writing tool, should we say, using generative AI. So we've got managed identities, Azure Container Apps, we've got a Bing search, we've got AI search, we've got Azure OpenAI services, we've got a writer agent, which is using another deployment, and an editor agent, which is then using another deployment. So this is really quite complicated and so much that's gone into this one. So each one of those has got a Bicep file, which is attached to it. So we can just jump into the application itself. We've got the web. So this is probably going to have one of our container apps. Yep, so we've got container app here. Again, Bicep is quite user-friendly to some extent because it's key value names, and this is where you're going to be populating, just like you would do in the portal. If you're going to create a new resource, then this is where you'd be creating it through this module. Very, very good and really quite interesting to do that. The same, we've got the API container over here. So you can see this is what it's building on. And what AZD is doing is it's taking this information, calling the service API with these key value pairs, and populating and creating that resource for me in Azure. So what we can now do is go and take a little look at it. So I've got two running now, but let's just go and do the one that spin the one up, which we have just opened. This is the Contoso Creative Writer. So this is what we just deployed. Now I've got an example button here. And what I'm going to get it to do is, can you find the latest camping trends and what folks are doing in the winter? Can you use a selection of tents and sleeping bags as context? So this is as the product. So what product should it look at? What it should do, and the assignment. So what I want it to then output to me. What kind of writing should I do? And I'm saying write a fun and engaging article that includes the research and product information. The article should be between 800 and 1,000 words. Maybe let's make that a little bit shorter. So let's go 200 and 500 words. Make sure to cite sources in the article, as you mentioned, and research, not at the end. So let's start the work. If I click this button down here, this little bug, you can see, and that's like a little bug, like a tracer bug, as opposed to not an actual coding bug. But you can see the first agent has started and it's done the research task. So it's gone off and it's found some sources that I want it to look at for people to do when camping in the winter. So it's found all of these lovely sources. It's then started the marketing task. So it's found some products to talk about. So Trailmaster X4 tent. I don't know, if you're a camper, tell me if that's good or not. Alpine Explorer tent. Again, if you're a camper, tell me if that's good. I don't know, but I've been able to write an article based around this. And then the wonderful thing is when it comes to the end, so it's completed the writing task. So it started writing it as you saw it down here. And I'm glad it did it really quickly because too long of an article would have taken time. But it's also done an editorial task. Now this agent, these are all separate agents working in tandem one after the other. So this is what I mean when they're more autonomous. So of course you need to review this article once it's done, but it's gone off and edited. So it's like self-reflected on the information that it's sort of gathered and written about, and then it has produced it and then told me, hey, it's A-okay, it's good now. So it's saying the research feedback, so there's no feedback, it didn't reject anything. Your writing is engaging and informative. Ensure the product links are functional and consider adding a brief section on safety tips for winter camping to ensure the article's value. So what it's done there is it's gone off and it's evaluated what it wrote about, noticed that it missed off something, so some safety tips, and just advised me as a user to now go and add that. So it's taking it in, reflecting on it. So this is a really, really cool way to use agents. So this is like the next step in AI, in generative AI. So we're no longer just asking questions, we are going that one step further. So all that aside, we can now go and have a quick look at templates. So we have this wonderful thing called Awesome AZD. I'm going to make this light mode so I can see it better because I've got light reflecting on my screen. Template library is where you can find a whole bunch of these templates. Now, again, this is going to be posting the resources or how this all sent out for you, but you can go through and you can filter by language. You can filter by, I don't know, framework. We can look at all the different things that are available to us, different services. But one of the main features, which I love, is actually this collection at the top called AI Collection. This is where you can go ahead and you can see all the different AI templates that are not just Microsoft authored, but you can see that they're community authored as well. So people like yourselves and people like us at Microsoft, we create these, we write them, we deploy them for you, and you can put a pull request in to have them shared publicly. So it's another really good way to get hands-on with this application, learn Bicep, and improve your coding skills. I think it's brilliant. So I think that's pretty much it from that side. Let me just move this out of the way. Let's go and have a look at the portal, shall we? So here's one that I deployed, and this is a different one I deployed earlier. This was my backup in case that one didn't work, but it did work for us, but it's the same thing. So in the portal, I can go ahead and I can see here in my resource group that I've got all of these different resources that it deployed. There's tons, there's quite a lot. Just imagine that I was a developer, that I was tasked to do this. It would have been super difficult to do that. and tie them all together. But look, we've got AI, Azure OpenAI, we've got AI services, we've got AI Studio, container apps, Azure container apps, a whole brilliant load of services. But the one thing that I want to draw your attention to is actually cost and the cost analysis. I've had this one deployed for 2 days now, and nothing in life is free. I've already told you that. Again, when you use AI, you have to be really careful and conscious when you're sort of using these services, because hey, if you don't have the limits and the quotas in place, then yeah, it does cost money. And if you do something, I don't know, maybe you put the wrong provisioning in or something, it can cost you a lot of money. So just be really careful. So bringing your attention to this Writer app, I've had this deployed for 2 days now, and it's only cost me $1.12. So translate that into your own currency and go with it. This is US dollars, by the way. But you can see that it's not costing me a whole lot of money, and I've had all of those services deployed, and I've used it a few times now. So again, cost analysis, everything to do with AZD, you need to make sure that you are cross-checking how much it's going to actually cost you. But yeah, that's a really good thing to look at. And I was going to show you, I don't know if we have time, but there is the tokenizer that I mentioned. So if you wanted to write some text and say, hey, can you make me an article on building a car? You can see that the tokens here are, it's splitting them up into characters and tokens. And there we go. So with that, I'm going to end. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Liam. We'll be back to you in a few minutes for the Q&A. But for now, we want to have a short break because we have only 15 minutes left to discuss about and present you the question of the contest. So are you ready, everyone? Okay. The question is, what are the programming languages that the Azure Developer CLI currently supports? A. JavaScript, Java, Go, .NET. B. JavaScript, Python, .NET, Java. C. Python, Rust, .NET, PHP. D. Java, Python, TypeScript, and Go. Write the correct answer on the chat. We can see behind the scene who is answering first, and our team moderator team will just now confirming with the winners. I will give you 1 more minute to look at the answers. Okay. While you're typing, we want to show you an amazing additional ways to invest in yourself, just like you did today, how to skill up and to gain more knowledge about the Gen AI revolution and how to actually leverage it to create a real AI, generative AI application. So today is the second session out of a full year of sessions. Last 2 weeks ago, we added the first session about Azure and GitHub better together, where we've seen all of the new features in GitHub, like extensions, like GitHub Copilot, Workspace, and more. Today it was the first session about generative AI, but what is it that you can look forward? So in the next 4 upcoming sessions, we're going to have a deep dive into LLM, SLM, how to create an examples of generative AI application, and then we'll look into the AI infra, speak about the cost, about how to show you more of a real life demo coding about AI infra, and next on we'll speak about the security, how to keep your application secured, and also we of course speak about GitHub Advanced Security. So a lot of great things to cover. You can see half of them already in our registration page, so please check it out and register. We will send you reminders. And now I want to also to present dearest Moria, the Reactor PM for EMEA, that will present another additional opportunities for you to skill up. Moria.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Adi, and thank you, Liam. I really hope you all enjoyed this session. So I wanted to share with you a bit, for those of you who are actually new about the Reactor program. So actually, Reactor is a Microsoft program that offers developers, startups, entrepreneurs online and in-person sessions worldwide. So we actually have the 10 physical community hubs in different locations that you can see is the map. And we also provide online events where you can, on different technical topics, which you can attend at any time. So you can scan the QR code now on the screen if you're keen to learn about other upcoming events that we have at the Reactor. One of the programs that we are using at the Reactor is the Microsoft Learn program. So Microsoft Learn is basically a hub for developers and for organization where they can access free training, certification, documents, webinars, and really everything that you, every way that you would like to learn through on different technical topics. So you can visit Microsoft Learn. You can scan this QR code. Actually, this will lead you directly to the AI Learning Hub, which you will see all kind of different learning paths, specifically on AI. You can learn by yourself on your own pace. Thank you, Adi. You can learn basically by yourself online from home, and of course it's free. So this is the AI Learning Hub, and you can visit this website to check out all the other resources that we offer there. The other learning hub that we actually recently announced in the last build event is the Copilot Learning Hub, where also here you have different learning paths and different training and opportunities to learn. So please check it out. This is the Copilot Learning Hub. It's also part of Microsoft Learn. So all of these opportunities you can find out more on the Reactor website. If you scan this QR code now on the screen, you can visit the Reactor website. This session, actually, I know that we shared at the beginning, it is recorded and will be also available on the Reactor YouTube channel. You have the link to the YouTube channel here on the screen. This will be available there, and you can check this out on demand. One last thing we wanted to also share with you, for those of you who are interested, is our Microsoft program for entrepreneurs, so the Founders Hub for startups. So if this is something that's relevant for you, I highly recommend you to scan this QR code, check Microsoft Founders Hub, where you can get for new startups, you can get from 1,000 to 150K Azure credits, together with many other benefits and opportunities for startups. It's all on the website. If this is something that's relevant for you, scan this QR code and you can reach the Founders Hub website. And yeah, I think Adi, I'll take it back to you. I'll hand it over back to you to announce the
winner. Yes,
the
we have a
winners,
winner.
yeah.
So congratulations to Muhammad. You won the first prize, and you already connected with our dearest Laura. So congratulations of listening carefully, and thank you, Liam, for a great question. And for the rest of the time that we have today, so Liam, back to you to answer additional Q&A that we have, questions. Let's see the questions. Meanwhile, you can see, yes?
No, I was just going to say that was really cool. Thank you ever so much for joining. That's brilliant. So can't wait to take some questions. I think I've got a final slide to say thank you.
So I'm going to read a few questions. Can we use AZD to push SSDT database scheme?
Where's this one? So I'm just opening up the questions.
You can look into the published, into the latest question.
All right, lovely. So can we use AZD to push SSDT database schema? So to my knowledge, no, but what you can do is you can publish as Azure Cosmos DB. So any database that falls under Azure Cosmos DB, you can publish those. So whether it's like a wrapper around Mongo, whether it's a SQL database, NoSQL, so you can create those. I know I was on a call yesterday with one of the team members who was working with Redis, so that's another really cool one. So it does work with the whole myriad of the service APIs for databases in Microsoft Azure.
Next one, the latest publish. Does AZD is the only way to work with ARM, which is what you showed in the demo, correct? Yes.
No, not ARM. So Bicep
Okay.
is a wrapper around ARM. So the way that it goes is you have an ARM template, which was really quite verbose and quite long. Bicep was the mediator between sort of making that a little bit more developer friendly and having a wrapper around ARM. So when you deploy something with Bicep, it actually decodes it to an ARM template to deploy the resources to Azure. But AZD uses Bicep, which is why you need the Bicep CLI installed alongside the AZD CLI. So yes, that's correct if you're looking at it from a very basic level, but it uses Bicep, not ARM, because Bicep is a wrapper around ARM.
Next one, other public templates we can follow up to spin up our own environments.
Yes, so you can create your own templates to spin up your own environments. So the ones that are available on Awesome AZD is phenomenal because they're already made. There's a lot of less groundwork that you need there. One thing I didn't show today is actually how to do AZD init. So AZD init does work from the ground up as well. So if you want to bring your own application code, one that's supported with one of the languages, Python is probably one of my favorite ones. It can actually pick up the technologies that you have in your code base. So it'll scan your code base, understand what you're working with and some of the resources that are there. It will then help create the infrastructure as code for you. So you don't necessarily need to be a guru or understand Bicep fully to write an entire Bicep infrastructure deployment yourself. So it does work at the very basic concept as well. The reason I showed the complicated version is because I can show you how complex this can go. So it doesn't put off people thinking, oh, it's only for really beginner applications or small applications. No, it's actually for both. But you can bring your own code base, you can create your own template, you can share your template and also use others. So tons of templates on there. They've all got infrastructure code in them that you can pull from. So you're not left out in the wind to dry. You can always grab from others and use them.
Another one, and I think the last one, does AZD allow you to utilize DALL-E as an LLM?
Well, AZD actually utilizes the Azure AI Studio or Azure OpenAI. So yes, if you have a deployment for DALL-E, I have actually created applications which do utilize these deployments. So yes, you can absolutely have those embedded into your applications. AZD doesn't talk to a language model specifically itself. AZD is a platform engineering tool. Therefore, it sorts out the infrastructure. What lies on top of that infrastructure is absolutely up to you as a developer. And as so, then yes, you can use any model that you really wish. Today, I was using GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 in that application. But if I wanted it to create images of tents and go forward, then I could absolutely include that too.
Perfect. And we have a question about how to register to the next event. So as I mentioned, last week we had 2 weeks ago, we had a session of GitHub and Azure Better together. And today we have the amazing Liam with us. Thank you so much, Liam, for scaling and maintaining AI apps. And within 2 weeks, we're going to have the next session for Code First LLM Ops from prototype to production. Let me post that on chat. Okay, and with that, I want to highlight and really give a big kudos to Liam, but not only to Liam, also to you for taking the time to invest in yourself, to spend time to skill up and learn. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you so much, Liam, for this amazing session and the great answers and the questions by the crowd. Thank you all, and we're going to see you in the next event.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.